Alrighty, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this informational webinar on Social Security over and underpayments, which is hosted by U.S. Senator Bob Casey's office and the Social Security Administration. We're grateful for everyone taking the time to join this call today. I want to start by introducing myself and the other panelists on this call. My name is Andrea Guscott, and I'm one of Senator Bob Casey's constituent advocates. I'm joined by my colleague, Maria Hernandez. From the Social Security Administration, we are excited to introduce Jessica Sylvant, and we're grateful for her willingness to join our office for today's webinar. And at this time, I'm going to turn the call over to Jessica to delve more into the specifics.
Thank you, Andrea, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's seminar covering overpayments and underpayments of Social Security benefits. I'm going to be covering quite a bit of information during this call today, but there will be time at the conclusion of today's webinar for questions. So I'm just going to type in, and I am going to turn off my video just to preserve the bandwidth as we go through it. So right into the next slide, please. So today's topic will cover a general overview of what an overpayment and underpayment are, how they occur, who is considered liable for an overpayment, and how they can be prevented. I'm also going to cover recent changes to our policies in the overpayment recovery process, as well as discuss repayment options that are available to individuals who have received a letter informing them of an overpayment. And finally, I'm going to touch upon appeal rights. So appeal rights of those who have an overpayment, that includes the various types of appeals, the levels of appeals, and how to file an appeal. Next slide, please. So before I jump into the specifics of overpayments and underpayments, I would like to first provide a general overview of Social Security benefit programs for anyone on today's call who may not be familiar with the types of payments our beneficiaries receive. We have four main programs that are funded by the Retirement Survivor and Disability Insurance Trust Fund. So the first is retirement. That's a monthly benefit payable to individuals who are a minimum age of 62 and have enough quarters paid into Social Security to be insured. Secondly, we pay survivor benefits to people who have been predeceased by a spouse or a minor child who had a parent who worked enough in their lifetime to qualify for benefits. Additionally, we have a disability program for individuals who have a physical or mental impairment that they expect to prevent them from working for 12 months or longer. So it is considered more of a long-term disability program. The Social Security Disability Insurance Program, or SSDI, as I will refer to it throughout today's presentation, is based on someone's work and earnings, where their monthly payment is derived from their recent earnings history. And we also pay family benefits to the spouse, in some situations an ex-spouse or minor child of someone who is entitled to retirement or disability benefits. Now, additionally, there is Medicare. That's a federal health insurance program. Social Security assists people in filing for Part A and Part B. Part A being hospitalization coverage, which covers inpatient visits, and Part B is medical coverage, which covers doctor's visits and outpatient hospital procedures. And then finally, there is supplemental security income, or SSI, as I will be referring to it throughout today's presentation, and that is a federal welfare program for disabled people who have limited income and resources. And there's no work requirement for that benefit, as it's a needs-based program. Next slide, please. So I'm going to discuss our disability programs in slightly more detail, as many of the types of overpayments that I'm going to cover today stem from the disability program. So this chart highlights the major differences in the SSDI and SSI programs. So SSDI is funded by the FICA tax, which is a tax collected on the wages of working individuals. So therefore, this program is based on someone's work and earnings. If they have enough credits paid into the FICA tax, they are insured to receive a benefit. And their qualifying family members may also be eligible for a benefit based on their earnings history. Now, this program does not have a cap or limit to income or resources except earnings from work. Where SSI does, because it's a needs-based program. So any other income or resources someone may receive from other sources will impact their eligibility for that program. Now, after a beneficiary has been entitled to SSDI for 24 months, they then become eligible for Medicare Part A and B. And then moving over to the SSI program, again, this is the federal welfare program based on need. So an individual cannot have income or resources exceeding $2,000 per month, and a married couple cannot have income or resources exceeding $3,000 per month. The SSI program can also pay benefits for children under age 18 who are disabled and in financial need. And SSI can also pay benefits to people who are age 65 or over. They do not need to meet SSA's definition of disability, but they have to fall within that designated income and resource limit. So that's referred to as an SSI aged benefit. Now, because there's no work requirement to qualify for SSI, it is funded by general tax revenues. And Medicaid is a state health program for people with low income and limited resources. And in many states, including Pennsylvania, Medicaid does come automatically with SSI eligibility. Next slide. So what exactly is an overpayment? Now, per our policy's official definition, an overpayment is the amount that we paid to an individual that was more than the amount that we should have paid to the individual. So the amount of an overpayment is the difference between the amount someone received and the actual amount that was due to them. Next slide. So how exactly does an overpayment occur? What are some of the common causes of them? An overpayment could result from someone who earned more than they initially estimated when they first started to receive Social Security benefits. The retirement survivor, family benefit programs, as well as SSDI and SSI all have specific allowable earnings limits. And when someone exceeds those limits and they are not timely reported to our agency, it can cause an overpayment. So changes in income types can also be a cause of an overpayment. We more commonly see this with the SSI program because it is needs-based. So any type of income will affect someone's eligibility and their payment amount. So that could be something like child support, unemployment benefits, alimony, VA benefits, or pension income. Now, living situation changes can also affect the payment amount due to an SSI recipient, as the amount payable is often contingent on whether that person resides in a home they own, if they pay rent, if they are in a facility or nursing home. So that will all affect the amount that they're eligible for from SSI. Marital status changes can also affect eligibility to spouse benefits, benefits as a divorced spouse, as well as survivor benefits. It can also affect SSI because it may determine whether that recipient is subject to a $2,000 limit or a $3,000 income and resource limit. And having resources that exceed those limits will always cause an overpayment of SSI benefits. Now, finally, when these changes are not reported timely, it often results in an overpayment because SSA did not have ample time to make the necessary adjustments to the issuance of the payment or the payment amount. Next slide. So there's different types of work limits for anyone who is receiving a benefit. It can vary depending on the age and the type of benefit that someone receives. Now, anyone receiving retirement, survivors, or family benefit from the SS program who's under their full retirement age will be subject to an annual earnings limit of $22,320. We look at the calendar year, January to December, when evaluating how much someone has earned. So should someone earn over that limit, Social Security withholds $1 back for every $2 exceeding that limit. And SSA will ask a person who is filing for benefits for the first time if they're working, and if so, what they expect to earn for the year. And if they anticipate earning over the yearly limit, SSA will withhold benefits up front to prevent an overpayment from occurring. Now, for someone who is filing for benefits in the year of their full retirement age is based on a person's date of birth. That limit increases to $59,520 for the year, and we only look at the months from January up to the month before they reach their full retirement age. So, for example, if someone reaches their full retirement age in October of this year and they wish to file for benefits effective this month with August, SSA will only consider their earnings from January through September. So if they're under that $59,520 limit, no benefits will be withheld from them. If they exceed that limit, Social Security will withhold $1 back for every $3 over that limit they earn. And then once a person reaches their full retirement age, there's no cap or limit to their earnings, so they can make whatever they like, and they're still eligible for that payment. Now, for those receiving SSDI, they can earn up to $1,550 per month gross and still be eligible for their disability payment. For someone who is blind, they can earn up to $2,590 per month before it affects their eligibility to the payment. Now, the disability program is a little bit different, where there's no 1 for 2 or 1 for $3 withholding. If the beneficiary is even $1 over that $1,550 limit or the $2,590 limit, their entire benefit will be withheld. So as you can see, a very major difference in the earnings limits for each program. Next slide. So liability is the responsibility for repayment of an overpayment. And this is a very important distinction in order for SSA to know who is responsible for repayment or appealing the overpayment, because we cannot waive or recover an overpayment from a person who was not liable. The Social Security Act provides that the overpaid person, whether or not he or she still receives benefits, his or her representative payee, and any other person receiving benefits on that overpaid person's record are liable for repayment of an overpayment. And there are 3 different types of liability. The first being primary. That is when the overpaid person or the representative payee are directly liable. For anyone who's not familiar with the representative payee program, if someone is deemed incompetent of responsibly managing their own Social Security benefits, we will elect someone to receive that benefit on their behalf. Could be a spouse, family member, agency, a friend that they trust, a relative, but it's that person's responsibility as the representative payee to ensure that that person's basic needs are met, food, shelter, clothing, and that the money is being used for their care. So the second type of liability is contingent. That's when a person receives benefits on the overpaid person's record. So that could be a widow or a spouse or a child. And then the final type of liability is joint and several, where there is equal responsibility or shared liability between the overpaid person and the representative payee. So let's get into specific examples. So I want to help clarify the different types here. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the first example we have is for primary liability. So again, this is where the overpaid person or the representative payee who received that benefit directly is liable. So we have John, who is a retirement beneficiary. He earned $50,000 while receiving benefits and did not report his earnings to Social Security. So John is primarily and solely liable for the overpayment as he directly received the funds. So when John receives his notice of overpayment due to his work, he will be solely liable for repaying the funds or requesting an appeal of the overpayment. Next slide. So the next example we have is for contingent liability. So there's Carol. She's duly entitled to a retirement benefit of $135 and a widow's benefit of $210. Now, SSA overpaid Carol's deceased husband $980 due to his previous work, and there's no estate. So because Carol is contingently liable for repayment from the widow's benefit, we will propose recovery of the widow's benefit. So even though Carol did not directly cause the overpayment on her husband's record, she is liable for repayment because she now collects a benefit based on his earnings record. Next example. So the third example we have is for joint and several. So there's Barbara. She's the representative payee for her son, Bob. And SSA learned that Bob got married and was not due benefits beginning April of 2024. We presume Barbara and Bob are jointly liable for repayment. If Barbara knew Bob had married and used the money for him, then they are jointly liable. But if Bob married in secret and Barbara had no knowledge of the event, she would not be liable to repay the debt, leaving Bob primarily liable to repay the overpayment. And this is a great example as to why determining liability is so important when addressing overpayment recovery. And oftentimes, SSA technicians have to do a little bit of digging in these types of scenarios to determine who will be responsible for repaying or appealing the overpayment. Next slide. Now, when someone receives a notice of overpayment, the letter will contain several pieces of information. First, the cause of the overpayment. So how did SSA come to this decision, and what information and facts were used to determine the person received too much in benefits? Secondly, the amount of the overpayment and the month it occurred. So by providing this information, the individual will be able to understand when it occurred and if they are financially able to refund the overpayment. And the notice will also request full and immediate refund of the overpayment. Understandably, many beneficiaries are not financially in a position to repay the overpayment balance in full. Excuse me. So also outlined and explained in the overpayment notice are the waiver and appeal rights of the overpaid individual. Now, the person's also given due process, which allows them time to protest the decision by filing a waiver or appealing. And SSA will pause collection attempts while the appeal is under review. And then finally, the notice will also outline who is liable for refunding or appealing the overpayment. Next slide. So earlier this year, SSA changed its overpayment recovery policy of any overpayment falling under the Retirement, Auxiliary Survivor, and SSDI, or Social Security Disability programs. Now, when a beneficiary is informed of an overpayment, they have a 90-day due process period where SSA will not make any overpayment collection or recovery attempts to allow that person time to consider their repayment or their appeal options. Now, one of the major changes is that 10% of the benefit payment will be withheld if no due process request is received. So if that person does nothing after receiving the overpayment notice, only 10% of their payment will be withheld for recovery rather than the entire benefit, which is what previously happened before these new rules were put into place. So the example of this I have is Mary. She has an overpayment of $2,000 and her monthly benefit amount is $800. So SSA will withhold $80 per month from her benefit to recover the overpayment if Mary does not request an appeal or a waiver of the overpayment. And at this rate, it would take 25 months to fully recover the overpayment at 10%. One other thing to note, Social Security does not charge any interest on overpayment, so the balance owed is the balance to be paid back. Next slide. So for overpayments that occur under the SSI program, the rules are very similar. Now, the rate of adjustment to recover an SSI overpayment is lesser of 10% of the recipient's total monthly income. So the total monthly income is their countable income plus SSI and state supplementary payment, or their entire monthly benefit. So the lesser of those two. So the example is Linda. She receives an SSI benefit of $940 per month, and she gets a letter informing her of an overpayment of $500 due to her earnings. So SSA will recover 10% of her total monthly income using the formula below. So we have her $940 SSI benefit plus $100 of her other countable income from work. So that comes out to be $1,043. And then 10% of that leaves her with $939 net per month, with 10% being put towards the overpayment. Next slide. Now, there are several methods of recovery or repayment that are available to an overpaid individual. So for someone who currently receives a monthly benefit, the recovery will be directly through benefit withholding of their payment. For people who no longer receive a payment because maybe their benefits were suspended or terminated, they can make installment payments through either credit card, over the phone, or by check. And these options are also given in the initial overpayment notice. If someone comes to an installment agreement with Social Security, they will receive monthly notices regarding the current balance and how to remit the payment that information provided includes the phone number if they want to pay over the phone, or who the check can be made payable to, and how to arrange payment via credit card. And we do work with people to try and recover the overpayment within 12 months. However, if they are unable to repay in that time period, a different rate can be negotiated, where we can spread out the timeline to 60 months or even as little as $10 per month. Now, in these circumstances, we will ask for financial evidence supporting that person's statement that they can't afford to repay more than a certain amount per month. That usually just includes evidence of their income and their expenses. So rent, mortgage, utility bills, grocery expenses, and any other monthly bills that they are responsible for. Next slide. So in situations where someone's overpayment is less than $2,000, we may grant a waiver of the overpayment at the person's request, as long as they were without fault in causing the overpayment. So what that means is that it was under circumstances completely out of their control, or perhaps caused by Social Security's error. And this type of request can also be requested and granted over the phone. This provision applies to overpayments that occur in both SSI and retirement survivor SSDI programs as well. Next slide. So you've heard me use the term appeal several times already today, but what exactly does appeal mean when it comes to an overpayment? So simply put, when a beneficiary disagrees with the fact of the overpayment, or they believe the overpayment amount is incorrect, they can appeal that decision. So in order to do so, they have to complete and submit what's called a request for reconsideration form. It's also known as the SSA-561 form, and it is available online at ssa.gov. Also available by calling our toll-free 800 number and requesting the form be mailed to them. And the reconsideration can be submitted back, can be mailed or brought in person to a field office. It has to be received within 60 days from the date shown on the initial notice of the overpayment. We also generally give about 5 days for mailing, so there's a little bit of a cushion there. So we can extend that to 65 days, but it has to be submitted within that time frame. Next slide. So there are several reasons someone may request an appeal concerning an overpayment on their record, including the income or resources that were used in establishing and calculating the overpayment. So for example, if someone received a notice of overpayment that stated they were overpaid due to earnings exceeding the allowable limit, but the wages reported were from severance pay and not actual countable income under the earnings test, they would be a good candidate to file an appeal to have the fact of the overpayment reviewed and reconsidered by SSA. Living arrangements, that's another example of a reason someone might want to consider filing an appeal. This is because SSI benefits can be reduced if someone has reported that they live in another person's household where they pay less than their fair share of housing costs, or if someone is listed as residing in a hospital or nursing home, a public or private medical treatment facility. This impacts the amount of SSI benefits someone's eligible for, and the accurate reporting of someone's residence type is very important in preventing and appealing overpayments that may not be correct. So the overpayment amount itself can also be appealed. Let's say someone was overpaid while receiving SSDI benefits because our records show they earned above the allowable monthly earnings limit for 5 months of the year, but they have pay stubs that show they only earned above the limit for 3 months. We can reduce the amount of the overpayment with supporting evidence of that. Next slide. So where exactly does the appeal go once it's been filed? So the first step or level of appeal is a reconsideration, and that's the SSA-561 form, excuse me, that has to be submitted within 60 days of receipt of the overpayment notice. Now that form is routed to one of our national processing centers, where a technician will review all the facts of the overpayment decision and they render their determination. So if the initial decision is affirmed, or upheld, the individual will receive a letter in the mail informing them of the decision and the next appeal steps, which is to file a hearing that is heard by an administrative law judge. So if the judge upholds the reconsideration decision, the appeal then moves to the appeals council level if that person decides to continue appealing the decision. If the appeals council upholds the decision, the final level of appeal is at the federal court review level, which is a civil suit that has to be filed within 60 days of the appeal council decision, and it goes to the U.S. District Court. Now, SSA cannot assist someone in filing a federal court review, but an individual can locate the U.S. District Court where they live by visiting our website. We have it searchable by the state where you reside. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, in most scenarios, an individual has to file that appeal within 60 days. So if extenuating circumstances were at play that prevented that person from timely filing the appeal, they must include a written statement with their appeal explaining the reason for the late filing. So it's called good cause for late filing. And the majority of determinations that fall under the retirement survivor disability insurance program are made by a technician in one of the processing centers, while field office technicians make good cause determinations for the SSI program. Now, a few examples of late filing could include someone who was perhaps seriously ill, maybe they were inpatient in the hospital or incapacitated due to a medical condition. Perhaps there was a death or a serious illness in their immediate family. We oftentimes have people who submit their appeal to the wrong government agency, but they do it in good faith, so we can accept it. Or they were provided incorrect information by an SSA employee regarding the appeals process or the time frame. So if the SSA technician finds good cause, the request for reconsideration will be processed, but if good cause is not found, the request will be dismissed and that person will be notified via mail. Next slide. So we talked about what conditions must be met to file an appeal, which must be stated on the appeal form. So that person has to state why they disagree with the fact or the amount of the overpayment. Essentially, they don't believe an overpayment should exist. The other type of protest that someone may request is called a request for waiver of overpayment recovery. A waiver should be filed when the person acknowledges the overpayment occurred and that it is correct, but they either shouldn't or cannot afford to repay it. Hence, they ask that SSA waive collection of that overpayment. Now, the waiver form may be found on SSA's website, which is ssa.gov, or requested by phone or in person at a field office. Next slide. So waiver request can be made orally or in writing by submitting the SSA-632 form. It can be sent via fax or mail. Now, when a request is made over the phone, the person has 60 days to submit the formal waiver to their local office, and any collection attempts of the overpayment will cease or be paused during that period until a decision's been made on the waiver. Now, it's also important to note that a waiver request can be made at any time. It does not need to be filed within 60 days of the notice of the overpayment like a reconsideration does. So in order to meet the conditions for a waiver, the liable person must be found both without fault in causing the overpayment, and they have to prove inability to repay it. So proof of income and expenses also have to be provided to support the inability to repay the overpayment. Next slide. Okay, so we've talked in pretty great detail about how overpayments occur and what to do if you receive an overpayment notice, but how can someone avoid the situation from the get-go? The next few slides will outline the best steps that someone can take to prevent an overpayment from occurring in the first place, which saves time, money, and quite frankly, the headache of navigating a stressful situation that is usually avoidable. Next slide. So being aware of one's reporting responsibilities while receiving a benefit from Social Security is extremely important to ensure our agency has accurate and current information, which can impact a person's benefit amount and eligibility to receive their payment. Any changes in someone's work while receiving an SSI benefit should be reported as soon as possible and no later than 10 days after the end of the month in which the change occurred. So if someone returned to work or increased their hours in the month of August, they should report that no later than September 10th to prevent an overpayment of their benefits. Now, there's several ways that someone can report their earnings. We have a toll-free wage reporting telephone system. There's also a mobile wage reporting app that can be downloaded on any smartphone. Also online through a My Social Security account. I'm going to talk about My Social Security in greater detail in just a couple minutes here. But we do have several ways that they can be reported that don't involve having to go to an office, to wait on hold, to try to get through to someone. The wage reporting telephone system is automated, so you don't even have to speak with anyone. Next slide. So in addition to earnings, I wanted to highlight, I'm not going to go through all these, but just a few additional changes that we frequently see as the source of SSI overpayments when they are not reported timely. Changes in living arrangements, resources. So resources could be anything that you own that can be liquidated into cash, life insurance policy, bank accounts, 401ks, pensions, IRAs, vehicles, or properties. A change in marital status often causes, or failing to report, that can often cause an overpayment. A change of address, and also leaving the United States for a full calendar month or 30 consecutive days or more, that will preclude someone from being eligible for a benefit for SSI until they return to the U.S. Next slide. So in addition to reporting when work starts or stops, or the duties, hours, or rate of pay change, someone should also notify Social Security if they begin to pay out of pocket for expenses that are necessary in order for them to work. Few examples of this could be a service animal that is needed in order for the person to be able to go to work and to do their job. Medications, could also be special transportation such as paratransit that is needed in order for the person to get to and from their workplace. SSA can often deduct these types of out-of-pocket expenses from a person's wages if they're not reimbursed. So that can help someone continue to be eligible for their disability benefit. Even when they are maybe making over that $1,550 figure, these types of expenses can be deducted from their earnings to get them under that amount and keep them entitled. So also, if someone works under special conditions, let's say they're allowed to take more breaks than other employees or do lighter or easier job duties, but they're paid the same as an employee who does not receive special conditions, we may be able to subsidize their work and help keep them entitled to their benefit while they're employed. Next slide. So to touch upon wage reporting once more, these are the various types of wage reporting that are available to all disability recipients under both the SSI and SSDI programs. So again, wages can be reported at ssa.gov through my Social Security account by visiting or calling an office. Our website does have a field office locator tool where you can input your zip code and it provides you with the contact information for your office. Someone can also mail or fax the information to their office or call our toll-free National 800 number listed at the bottom of this slide. So there's many ways to report this information at the individual's ease and convenience. Next slide. So moving into underpayments, simply defined, an underpayment is any monthly benefit or part of a monthly benefit that is due to a person but has not been paid. So it can occur when someone overestimates the amount of money they expect to earn for the year. That in turn causes SSA to withhold an excess of monthly benefits from that beneficiary. And it can also result from a payment being returned or not received. So it can happen when a deceased beneficiary was due a payment before their death, but the payment was perhaps returned to the Treasury. Next slide. So as with overpayments, SSA notifies a beneficiary whenever an action is taken that will affect their payment amount, including when they are due an underpayment. So the notice will inform the person of past due benefits and how the money will be issued to the person. Generally, that's done either via direct deposit or a paper check. The notice will also inform the person if the underpayment is being paid with any other amount payable to the person, such as an ongoing monthly benefit, and when to expect that money. So if they're getting direct deposit, it's usually within a couple days that they'll say, you should expect this money, let's say on August 30th. It's usually within a business day or two of that date, so that the person knows to keep their eye out and look for that payment in their bank account. Now, a living beneficiary does not need to request payment of an underpayment due to them. So a form or formal request is not required to issue that payment to the individual, and they're generally not required to take any action on their end to receive the money. Now, when an underpayment is due to a deceased beneficiary, we do have an order of priority that we follow to issue the money. So first, it would go to, if there's no spouse, then it would go to a child of the deceased beneficiary. If there's no children and they have parents who are living, it would go to the parents. And then finally, the legal representative of that deceased beneficiary's estate. So we do try to find someone that we can pay that underpayment to if the individual is deceased. Next slide. Now I'd like to change gears for a few minutes just to share some information about SSA.gov. It's a very valuable resource of information about all of SSA's programs. Now what you see here is a screenshot of the SSA.gov homepage. This is where you can access online publications about all of our programs. We have online calculators to help people plan for retirement by accessing personalized estimates. People can also apply for retirement, disability, or Medicare on our website with a My Social Security account. They can also check their application status or appeal status after they have applied for benefits. So there's just so many great tools and resources available on our website, which is available and accessible 24/7. Next slide. Now, My Social Security or My SSA, it's another great resource for people who both are receiving SSA benefits as well as those who are not yet receiving but planning perhaps for their financial future, or maybe have unexpectedly become disabled and want to apply for disability benefits. So My SSA, it's secure, it's convenient, it helps people manage their benefits and make timely updates to their record, all without having to call or visit an office and wait in line. Now this is a screenshot of the page that someone would land on when either signing up for or logging into an existing MySSA account. And it was also recently redesigned to be a little more user-friendly. So there's, again, a lot of great features and online calculators that you can access, and it pulls directly from your earnings record. So any benefit estimate that you receive is going to be incredibly accurate to your earnings record and what you'll receive when you do approach retirement or should you become disabled. Next slide. So these are some of the most popular online services available to someone who currently receives benefits or has Medicare coverage. They can opt out of mail notices for those available online. So instead of getting letters mailed to your home address through snail mail, it goes right to your email. Someone can also request a replacement Social Security card should they meet certain requirements. Generally, that's just having a valid, unexpired government ID. As we talked about already, a person can report their wages if they're working and receiving either SSDI or SSI benefits. They can also get a benefit verification letter as proof that they receive benefits from our agency, which often, organizations and third parties and agencies may request proof and verification of that income. It's an easy way to get that information. A person can also check their earnings record, their benefit, and their payment information. They can change their address, their phone number, start or change direct deposit. They can submit advanced designation of representative payee. That's kind of thinking ahead, but we do now allow people to, in advance, designate someone, could be a spouse, another family member or someone that you trust to designate as your representative payee should a time ever come where you need assistance in handling your benefits. A person can also request a replacement Medicare card, as well as a replacement 1099 or 1042-S for tax season. Next slide. And for those who don't receive benefits, there's still a lot of great things that can be accessed with a My Social Security account. So someone can view their retirement benefit estimates at different ages, view potential spouse benefits if they are going to be eligible on a spouse's record down the road. You can also request a replacement Social Security card, whether you receive Social Security benefits or not. If you have a pending application or appeal, you can check the status of that online. You can also get a benefit verification letter as proof that you do not receive benefits if that's being requested by any kind of agency or organization. And you can also, excuse me, you can also review your Social Security statement, which is really important to do just to confirm that the earnings that we have posted on your record are accurate, because that's what your benefit amount ultimately will be based upon, how much you've earned and how much you've paid into the FICA tax and the Medicare tax. And you can also see on the Social Security statement the estimated Social Security and Medicare taxes that you've paid over your lifetime. So there's a lot of really great information that you can access through the My Social Security account. Next slide. So most SSA services, applications, and forms are available online. Most questions can be answered over the phone, but if someone does need to visit an office, our agency has a new mobile check-in express feature where the visitor can check in for their visit by scanning a QR code on a kiosk. So we also offer private and accessible check-ins with ADA compliant kiosks in most offices as well. So it kind of just makes the check-in process a little more smoother and seamless. It lets you put your information in, let the employees know what you are there for, so they can help you out as efficiently on their end as they can. Next slide. Now, we also have accounts on most social media platforms, all the ones that you can see on the screen here. Under the handle @SocialSecurity, it's a quick and easy way to stay informed about important updates such as cost of living adjustments, which is usually announced around October, changes to the work limits, and a bunch of different agency initiatives. So we have a YouTube channel, actually. It contains a lot of information and informative videos about our benefits and services, as well as how to protect yourself and others from SSA-related scams and fraud, which unfortunately we continue to see on the rise. So it's a really great resource to stay updated and share information with others too. Next slide. Okay, well, really quickly, I just want to thank everyone who joined today's call for your time and interest in our programs and our services, and I hope that you found this information helpful and informative, and I will turn it back to Andrea.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much for sharing that important information, Jessica. There will be a Q&A after I give a little bit of information. So if you have questions right now that you're thinking of, down in the right-hand corner, there is a Q&A button. You can feel free to type your questions into there, and we will get to those questions in a few minutes. So now I'm going to provide an overview on how Senator Casey's office may be of assistance to individuals regarding Social Security issues and navigating federal agencies. So Senator Casey's Office of Constituent Services consists of a team of advocates who assist constituents who are experiencing an issue with a federal agency. This includes, but is not limited to, Social Security benefits, a missing passport, an IRS problem, a VA benefit, immigration snags, SBA concerns, and more. It's important to note that if we cannot provide assistance, such as with a state or a private entity, we can refer constituents to someone who can best help. With regard to Social Security, we can assist we can assist constituents navigate the different programs within the Social Security Administration, such as Social Security retirement, spousal survivor benefits, Social Security disability, supplemental security income, and Medicare Parts A and B enrollment. The most common Social Security cases include Social Security disability appeals or back pay, replacement Social Security cards, questions regarding status of their retirement claim and overpayment, and Medicare enrollment questions. Our office is also able to reach out to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, also known as CMS, when it comes to Medicare coverage issues and Medicare Advantage, also known as Part C, and Medicare Part D prescription drug plan issues. Common casework with CMS includes issues with claims payments, coordination of benefits, Medicare as a secondary payer, issues with Medicare enrollment, and coverage of medical equipment, home health, hospital, and hospice care. If you would like to request assistance from Senator Casey's Office of Constituent Services, either with a Social Security question or for an issue with another federal agency, please do not hesitate to contact our office. You can either call us at 717-231-7540 and select option 2, or you can give us a call at our toll-free number, which is 866-461-9159. And of course, you can also reach out via Sarah Casey's website. So now we will go into our Q&A time. So first question is, will we receive the presentation slides? You will receive, this is being recorded, so you will receive a link to the recording. I'll likely get that out to individuals by next week. Our second question is for Jessica. So how long has the $1,550 income limit been in effect?
That's been in effect since January of this year. It's been trending to go up each year. Generally, those announcements are made around October when they announce the cost of living increase. They generally also announce what the earnings limits will increase to for disability beneficiaries, as well as those receiving benefits from the retirement survivor and auxiliary program too.
Thank you. Those are all the questions that are in the Q&A for right now. I'll just pause to give people a moment or two to type any questions that they're thinking of, and we can answer those. Alrighty, so not seeing any more questions or anyone typing any questions. I want to thank everyone for joining this call. If you do think of a question after the webinar has concluded, you can feel free to call Sarah Casey's office and we will get you an answer to your question. But again, thank you to Jessica for joining us today. Thank you for you, the viewers, for joining, and we hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.